Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to see you all here today to have a chance to talk with you. We are right at our time, so we're going to jump in. We have a lot to share, and we're hoping to have some time for conversations as well. So I'm going to kick us off, and then you'll actually be hearing from all of us over the next hour. So, as you know, we're here today to talk about student voices, stronger internships, and some of our internship resources and introducing the interns who are helping to shape them, who are two of our co-presenters today. So I'll start by sharing just a little bit about CCWT as a whole for those of you who aren't familiar, and I see many familiar names. So welcome everyone. Nice to see you all, folks who have been our affiliates or been to our conferences in the past. So our mission, for those of you who may not be as familiar, is to advance research. Sorry, I don't keep getting these pings with folks coming in. Okay, so about CCWT. So our mission here is to advance research, programs, and resources that strengthen students' career development and well-being as they transition into the workforce. So we're really interested in, and ever since we were founded as a center, we want to center and elevate the voices of all students, and especially students who have been historically marginalized in higher education and the labor market. And we're doing this because our ultimate goal is to drive meaningful institutional and societal change. So, some of our areas of expertise are college internships and work integrated learning, which you're going to hear about today. We also have a focus on career wellness, career readiness, and in providing training and technical assistance. So I am Mindi Thompson. I'm the director of CCWT, and I'm a professor of counseling psychology.
Hello, everyone. My name is Missy Clemens, and I'm the Associate Director of CCWT.
Hi everyone, I'm Nadia Choi. I'm a senior at UW-Madison, majoring in psychology and information sciences. But here at CCWT, I am the marketing and communications intern.
Hi everyone, my name is Suchita. I study statistics and sociology at UW-Madison, and at CCWD, I'm the research coordinator intern.
Neat. So, a quick overview of what we'll be talking about in the next hour is we'll start with identifying the problem. We'll then talk about our project overview, internship structure, internship resources and tools. We'll share and hear from our two interns with their insights. And then we'll talk just a little bit about next steps for CCWT. And we will have time at the end for questions and conversation that we're hoping to have. And I'll say, feel free throughout to type in questions to the chat. I have my chat box open to the right of my screen, and I'm sure that we all do. And so we're happy to be engaged in sort of back and forth conversation throughout the presentation as well. So I'll start by just overviewing the problems as we saw at CCWT and Missy and I as we were in some initial stages of developing this project that we really were thinking about the fact that we have sort of the supply demand imbalance. We know that internships and participation in work-based learning is extremely important. Students, we hear all the time from students themselves that one of the things that is the most impactful and useful for them in their experience as students is to gain access to work-based learning. This is one statistics, 8.5 students rate paid internships as on a scale of 8.5 out of 10 in terms of making them a stronger candidate for the kind of job they want. So these are high impact practices. There's a lot of research that documents this over the years. And we also know that even though these are such high impact practices, we know that students want to seek out work-based learning experiences, that we're seeing an increasing supply demand imbalance. So we have 2 times the number of applications per internship posting that we're seeing on a regular basis, that there are more students who want internships than internships available. And this discrepancy is worsening. So some recent data from the Handshake Internship Index showed that there was a decrease in positions available, even as more students are wanting them. We also know that creating internships and what we hear from employers is that creating and developing and running high quality internships is very time and resource intensive. And so there are some barriers to employers wanting to and being able to sufficiently offer internships. So one of our recent publications from CCWT was to create what you see on the right side of your screen is a screenshot of the cover. This is a resource that we developed specifically with employers in mind to help guide through what we have learned from our own research over the past decade at CCWT of what are some best practices, what are some strategies that they can use to develop and to utilize high impact internship experiences for students. So we wanted to turn this research that we've been doing as a center over the years to actionable supports. And our mission for this particular project, what we call the WELL project, is to ensure that students have access to work integrated learning tools, tools to optimize their experiences, and career development skills to navigate their transition into the workplace. So our goal ultimately is to help to contribute to closing that supply-demand imbalance. We want to be helpful in creating scalable and student-centered resources and curriculum that enhance students' career readiness and smooth their transitions into the workplace. So with that goal in mind, we are really cognizant of the internship ecosystem and that we know that there are three primary stakeholder needs and stakeholder groups. So the first is, of course, students. So we wanted, when we were developing the project, and we still want, to center our students in all of the work that we're doing and all of the tools and resources we're providing. So we collaborate with students in the development and refinement of our resources to meet their most pressing needs. The second stakeholder group, and some of you who are attending today may be in this stakeholder group, which is scholars and practitioners. So we want to both utilize the best practices, the research, and the expertise of all of you who are working in this space to know what's helpful, to know what those best practices are for students, as well as for scholars and practitioners, and also to draw upon all of the amazing research that's happening across the country and globally on this question of students' internship experiences and their contributions to career development and career readiness. And then finally, employers are the third stakeholder group, and we want to center their needs by helping to develop, identify what their needs are, and help support them in best practices or strategies that allow them to offer internships in a way that is scalable, in a way that is high impact for themselves as in their organization, as well as for the students who complete the internship experiences. So with that, we developed a internship program that we have been running for the past 2 years, Missy and I. And this cohort program was developed in combination with students at the undergraduate level as well as at the graduate level, which we'll introduce a few more folks in a few minutes. But our program includes 7 sessions of a professional development curriculum. It is designed intentionally to be modular and adaptable. We have competency assessments that are delivered at 3 time points or can be delivered at up to 3 time points ideally for interns, and an option for this to be completed virtually or in person. We also have created and developed a number of employer related supervision tools. So with that, I'll turn it over to Missy, who will share more about our internship structure.
Thanks, Mindy. So numerous studies, including CCWT's college internship study, have told us, you can do that, have told us what students want and need from their work integrated learning experiences. And our inaugural cohort of students, graduate students and undergraduate students have helped us develop the resources and tools and the structure that we're using in our internship program. So CCWT, our students, undergraduate and graduate, use those findings to create the internship scorecard framework, which is what the basis of our program is. And that's what you see here. So the evidence-informed needs, what we heard from students was that they want meaningful tasks. And they want those tasks to help them connect what they're learning in the classroom to what they want to do in their career. And they also want those tasks to help them develop transferable skills, so those soft skills that we know are so important, and skills that they'll carry with them through their career, so those occupational skills. So the internship structure, what that looks like is we developed competency assessments, both those career readiness competency assessments that are informed by the NACE career competencies and occupational competencies. And those were based on what the job they're doing at CCWT is and what they want to do in their careers. With those competency assessments, we developed goals and learning plans based on the skills that they have and the skills that they want to grow. And then, as Mindi mentioned, we have that 7-session professional development series. And then also in our meetings, we do some one-on-one professional development and some professional development that's as needed. Some other things on the scorecard are, we know they want to be treated like full-time employees. We know they want coaching and mentorship, and we know they want networking opportunities. So from the scorecard perspective, our internship structure, they got formal onboarding from day one. They were treated like full-time employees. They had an onboarding session where they got a guide that told them most of the things they were going to need to know to be successful in their internship experience, which most people in a full-time job get that onboarding and orientation process. They also have weekly supervision meetings where they receive support, they receive task supervision, they receive coaching and mentorship as much as possible, and just generally receive supervision on things that they need supervision on. And then, as much as possible, with this being a primarily remote internship, we give them external and internal opportunities for networking, which they'll talk about in a little while. And then this last slide on the internship scorecard framework, these are mostly decisions made as an employer, but they very much impact the students' experience in the internship. So we do talk to the students about these things. So the purpose of the internship from the very start, literally in the interview process, I talk to each student about what the purpose of this position is. I talk to them about how we want to help them develop as a student, but also they're helping us develop this internship program, the resources. And they're also helping us, complete tasks and projects. The modality, it's primarily remote, but we call it hybrid because we do have some in-person experiences that we require of them. The duration, originally, we slated this as a 6-month opportunity because we found that with our first cohort of interns, that seemed to be a magic number for them. But we found after 6 months, we still had some tasks. And so we asked if these two wanted to extend, and I was really happy when they accepted it. And then in terms of equity, we know that students have better outcomes. So they get better jobs, higher paying jobs, jobs that are more related to their careers, and jobs that they're going to stay in if they're paid versus unpaid. And so we not only pay them, we pay them a living wage, and we pay it a wage that is commensurate with the job that they're doing. So that's really important to us.
So as you all already know, we've met 2 of our current interns, and we're going to hear a whole lot more from them in the next few slides. But I also just wanted to note and to give appreciation and acknowledgement to a larger group of folks who have helped to inform and create these materials and this content over the past 2 years. And so we have, as you can see here, a combination of graduate students and undergraduate students across
So now we're going to have the students talk to you about the resources and tools, and we're going to start with our competency assessments, and Nadia is going to start us off.
Yeah, thank you for that intro, Missy. The competency assessment is an instrument that we use 3 times throughout the course of the internship. So once at the beginning to assess our starting skill set, as well as in the middle, and then at the end of the internship. And this assessment tool tests both occupational skills, as Missy and Mindi mentioned, but also those general career readiness skills that are just needed for general professional development. As part of this assessment, we would be presented a skill as well as the sub-skills that exist underneath it, and have to rate ourselves on a scale from 1 to 3 based on how confident we feel in that skill set. After we did our rating, we would then go ahead and give a brief description on why we gave ourselves that rating, how we've demonstrated that skill in the past, and how we've not demonstrated it, as well as identifying just specific areas for growth and specific skills that we want to grow in the internship itself. And so once that was complete, then our supervisor, in this case, Missy, would go ahead and do the same thing. So she would go ahead and rate us on each of these skills on a scale from 1 to 3, and then make a few comments about why she gave that rating based on her observations of how we've demonstrated those skills. And so this would lead to these completed competency assessment forms, which you can see on the slide here. And we would then meet, discuss our answers and areas for growth, and create a learning plan together, which would help me or Suchita develop those skills that we had highlighted in our assessments.
So coming to the actual experience of using the competency assessment, I found that it served as a really valuable framework to reflect on my current skill set. I particularly appreciated the sections that required us to provide specific examples relating to our previous experiences and how we've exhibited certain skills. Articulating these experiences has already been extremely helpful for me in my interviews, where I can really draw on my experiences to demonstrate to employers how I've displayed certain skills. I think the assessment also broadened my perspectives on the diverse range of competencies that employers usually look for. These can range from communication skills to teamwork and equity skills. I also hadn't considered the nuances within these blanket skill terms. For example, I was really surprised to see global and cross-cultural interactions categorized as a professional equity skill. It wasn't an area that I'd fully realized was relevant to the modern job market, and it really recontextualized how I presented my own experiences to employers. One aspect of the assessment that I found a little bit challenging and maybe counterproductive was the rapid shift between a reflective mindset to a more action-oriented one. At the end of each skill, we were required to provide one way in which we could improve the skill. This felt like an abrupt shift often in my mental state, and I think in the future, this could be a question that is answered by both the supervisor and the employee in collaboration.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Suchita in that these competency assessments were a great source of reflection overall in their structure, but also being able to just assess my own existing skill set versus the growth areas and how those stood at different points in the internship. I also found it extremely valuable that the assessment acted in itself as a form of like open feedback. It took some of the pressure away from asking my supervisor directly about additional feedback and kind of gave us the space to discuss the skills that were important, as well as for me to gain an outside perspective on how I was demonstrating that skill set. Additionally, I really enjoyed how the competency assessment was split into both occupational and career readiness skills. That distinction was helpful for me as an early career professional, being able to see the skills that were most specifically helpful for the industry that I was trying to grow in, but then also generally helpful to have as a professional and in order to become a helpful employee. And so I have 2 examples here of one of a general occupational skill, which would be closer to omni-channel marketing, but also dependability as a career readiness skill, which is one that I wanted to grow in. I also found that, once again, that timeline of having the assessment at the beginning of the internship versus in the middle and at the end was a great way for me to track my progress throughout the internship itself. But also it helped me grow in my confidence of how I could see myself developing over time within the internship program and how my priorities had changed over that timeline as well.
So some outcomes of the competency assessment for me where it really helped me solidify on what I want to do outside of college once I graduate. I really want to enter a quantitative social research role, so helping drive policy research, but working on the more data and mathematical side of things. So doing this competency assessment really helped me define concrete skills that I could develop, both that would help me in reaching my career goals and that would also help CCWT fulfill its mission. So on collaborating with Missy, we identified three major skills that we would work on during my internship. These were data management skills, qualitative research, and presentation skills. So you can see all these skills really align with the role that I want to go into in the future. One of my favorite projects that I worked on during my time at CCWD was an AI workforce project. So we conducted a literature review of articles that assessed how AI is affecting the workforce across different industries, especially the entry-level workforce. I used a data management tool called Zotero to manage my online library. This was the first time I'd used a very comprehensive tool to conduct literature reviews. I previously just tracked all my documents in a box folder or try to keep an Excel sheet. And I quickly realized it wasn't as efficient as using a software like Zotero. And I still use Zotero now, even in a lab position that I'm currently working in on campus. So it's been a really useful tool, and I can definitely see myself using it in the coming years. I'll turn it over to Nadia to talk about hers.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Suchita. I think that being able to explore your career interests and what you want to do post internship is something that has really been fruitful coming out of our learning plan discussions and also the competency assessment. For example, in my learning plan discussions with Missy, I expressed some of my career interests, which kind of fit into the competency assessment already, and the skills that I wanted to keep building. For example, I told her that I was interested in pursuing a career in user experience design and wanted to build my abilities in omnichannel marketing, being able to speak to diverse audiences, not only through social media, which had primarily been my role up until that point, but also through other digital forms such as the website or the newsletter. And so the biggest outcome to come out of that was really an expansion of my project scope and making room for more meaningful projects that fit those career goals within my internship. And so, yeah, initially I was doing social media work, graphic design work, but post learning plan, Missy and I were able to develop some assignments that would help me expand my marketing and digital design skills. I was able to design a edition of our newsletter, as well as write a press release, which I had never done before, and is definitely a learning experience for sure. But also help update the website content, which was really super fun and cool for me. The ECMC website project is one project that Missy was able to introduce me to, as I had mentioned to her that I wanted to improve my skills in stakeholder communication, as that's something that I haven't really touched on much in my coursework or in my internship so far. And so this project is a web development project coming out of CCWT, and it will give me the opportunity to work towards my career goals, build my portfolio in that way. But also it's something that I'm really excited for, and improving my teamwork within CCWT and outside of it as well.
Okay, thank you. So before we move on to professional development, there was a question in the chat about how we develop the competency assessments. And it was from Sarah, and it was about they had previously used their own skills rubrics, but have moved to the NACE competency assessments. And it's actually interesting because these are based on the NACE competencies. And I had used the NACE competencies to develop these competency assessments, and it's essentially a performance review is what it is, based on the NACE competencies. It uses the NACE competencies and then, does this whole thing, and had started using them and went to NACE to present them, and then found out that NACE had come out with their own instrument, and I haven't seen their instrument, so they could be very similar. But that's essentially what they did. So it has each NACE competency, then kind of the tasks and skills that would demonstrate that competency, and then some questions that follow it up, that help you kind of explore how it's demonstrated, why you rated it that way, and all of that. So that's how we developed that tool. So let's move on to professional development. And Suchita is going to talk about our professional development series and what that looks like.
Yeah, thank you, Missy. I'm excited to talk about this part of the WELL project because it was by far my favorite. The professional development series was a series of 7 workshops where a cohort of interns, including me and Nadia, and some external interns would come together and join a session that was led by a career expert. So these were usually members associated with CCWT. We had one session by Mindi, one by Missy, and some by other graduate students. And the workshops are led by people that are doing in-depth research on whatever they're presenting on. So it was a really wonderful way to kind of connect our own personal experiences with more concrete theoretical research, if that makes sense. And so as a group of 4 to 5 interns, we would work together through a workbook that you can see here on the right. And we would work through this workbook that had different activities related to different topics while the facilitator was presenting on how these activities can connect to your experience in the workplace. There were many different topics from networking to self-advocacy, conflict resolution, and career exploration. I'll turn it over to Nadia so she can tell us about her experience with these professional development.
Yeah, thank you, Suchita. So I would say I agree with Suchita. I think the professional development portion of the WELL project is really just the most unique part and also probably the biggest selling point I had coming into this internship, being able to not only develop myself professionally through my internship itself and the projects that I did within it, but also getting to learn about these other topics about the workforce, about skills that employers are looking for that I hadn't found typically in my college coursework was just really an exciting part of the program for me, I can definitely say. I also found it super fun how we would work with interns both inside the UW system, but also outside of it, and hear from their perspectives as people who are also navigating the workforce transition. We had an intern who was located in London in the UK, and so getting to hear those global perspectives of different interns, as well as seeing the similarities that we had as young people, as people who were working for the first time and such, was really a meaningful part of those workshops for me. I'd say that my favorite workshop was our most recent one, which was the Meeting Needs and Managing Conflict workshop. This was something that had stood out to me in my competency assessment. I felt that, managing workplace conflict was something that maybe you would only really gain experience in while being in the job, while gaining work experience. And so I really wanted to hear more about the research behind that and work through what that might look like in a career scenario. And that's definitely what that workshop did. It was really great, undergoing some training and reflection activities within the workbook and just speaking out loud with my co-intern, Suchita, and the other interns, and being able to work through common scenarios, understand what's the best topics and what's the best way to resolve them. And then also hearing, once again, from the research itself. I think that's something that is really important as academics and as interns is to hear, oh, what are the most common forms of conflict in the workplace? What is the research saying, and how can we best go about it? But yeah, those were all those especially memorable parts of the professional development series for me.
Thank you, Nadia. I really like what you said about how these workshops really concretize stuff that we didn't learn in class because we always learn about these really specific skill sets in our courses, but we never know how to develop those soft skills. So I really like that you touched upon. Um, for me, the professional development series was also the highlight of our internship. My favorite session personally was career exploration with Dr. Mindi Thompson. I feel like it really spoke to my personal experience entering college. I entered college with a really rigid plan for my education. I wanted I came in as a computer science major and I thought that I had to stick to it. I quickly realized that I didn't really enjoy my major, but cultural and parental pressures made me feel quite trapped in that choice. After attending Dr. Mindy's session, I was able to completely recontextualize my experience. She framed career as an ever-evolving trajectory more than a fixed destination that you're trying to reach. And this really eased my anxiety about the major that I was leaving college with. She also emphasized how cultural norms can influence professional paths, and that was particularly assuaging for me because I viewed myself with more compassion and flexibility. I now currently love what I'm studying, and I'm really excited about the major I'm leaving college with. But I don't possess a very strict view about what my future is going to look like. At the same time, I hold space and empathy for my parents' experiences and the desires that they have for me. But I make sure I hold space for their views without compromising my own desires for my future career. Finally, we're going to move into some of the networking opportunities we had. I'll let Nadia talk for the first two, and then I'll take on the last one.
Yeah, so a unique opportunity to come out of this internship with CCWT is getting to network directly with career professionals and who work with students and employers. And so this past November, we had annual CCWT conference where we got to meet and attend presentations with those CCWT affiliates and career professionals, getting to learn more about their employer perspectives, their internship frameworks, and all sorts of topics on professional development. On the right here, there's a little picture of me with Jody Vandenberg Daves. She gave a presentation on the workforce and early career women. It ended up being my favorite session of the day. And so I spoke with her a bit after on our day two conference, and she gave me her book. And so that was just an example of a great connection that I made through the conference and through networking in person. Additionally, I think that being the marketing intern for CCWT comes with its own benefits of networking. A lot of work that I did on social media, as well as the ECMC project, gave me the opportunity to work with those outside stakeholders, connect with them, collaborate with them on different posts and different content opportunities, as well as be able to improve my communication skills, as well as my teamwork skills within the program.
I think another great networking opportunity were just the workshops that we did. And while these were fully remote, the activities that the facilitators led us through really allowed us to connect with other interns. And like Nadia mentioned, there were some interns from different parts of the world. So it was really interesting and wonderful to understand the diverse perspectives that can influence someone, both in the career trajectory they take and how they approach workplace situations. So I think, yeah, that was also a really great networking opportunity. I'll also re-emphasize Nadia's point about the conference. I feel like conferences almost always feel very academic and um, kind of intimidating, but the CCWT conference was just a really relaxed and great environment that facilitated amazing conversation and had some amazing sessions. So I'm very grateful to have been able to attend that conference.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about some next steps. In other words, what are some things that we're currently working on and or thinking about working on for the future and or would love for you all to be working on. So the first is that we are developing a resource hub. So this, I had put it in the chat, the link to the web page where you're welcome to click on to go to learn more about our WELL project, about the resources we have available. We currently are in the process of finalizing them and getting them ready to be shared more broadly. And in the meantime, if there's any that you want to request, any that you saw today, any that you see on the website, we are very happy to share those out. So we're hoping to, as I said, finalize them and get them ready in a more consolidated place that's easy to access, easy to get more information for those of you who are looking to, let's say, learn more about the competency assessment piece. That we'll have that available for you all, hopefully very soon. The second piece that is something that is in progress and that we are thinking a lot about, and as I mentioned when we were talking about the Hiring for the Future guide for employers that Missy and I developed. So we really have been thinking and trying to center our employer partners and stakeholders and getting their perspectives on what works and what is helpful in internships for them, for their organizations, for themselves as individual folks within organizations, as well as to think about ways that employers, if they're interested in, for example, using our curriculum from the WELL program, that it will be really easy for them to adapt it to their particular organization, to their particular needs, the competency assessments to the particular types of internship positions that they hold and that they offer. So that's something we are think is a really important part of this scaling of internships to help solve and to address the supply demand imbalance that I was talking about at the beginning, is to really ensure that we're investing in understanding our employer needs and helping to do what we can to facilitate their delivery of internship best practices based on what we know from our own research at CCWT, as well as from other experts throughout the world, and those some of whom are you all on the meeting today. So thank you. The next thing that we are in process of working on and will continue to work on, and especially Missy and Suchita, I don't know if the two of you want to say more about this, but doing a national scan of employer best practices for internships. So this is something we're happy to dig into any or all of these a little bit more and answer questions. But again, fits with that second point that I was just speaking to, that we really want to know what is going well in the employer landscape in terms of internships that are working well for the organizations, in terms of internships that are working well for the students who they employ into those positions. I'm also in the process of working with a team, as well as with Nadia, on the work-based learning career supports mapping tool. Our sort of working name for this is called WorkWeb, but we are very much in development. This is the project she was speaking to, that we're in the process of developing some ways to better allow assessment of students' access to work-based learning, and to allow students access to work-based learning. Um, Whoops, sorry. Could you go back to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It
That's okay.
just clicked. Wait, it's like going forward there. Sorry.
No problem. I just was trying to remember what came next. So we are working on developing a mapping tool, and this is in part to be used by institutions to have a better assessment and understanding of what is the current status of their students' access to work-based learning experiences, and what are some ways that we can help to identify the gaps that are missing in those experiences that may be unique to the institution itself, or it may be unique based on certain student characteristics or student groups. So, for example, particular majors, particular demographic or identity variables, particular choice of career direction or intentions. And then the final one is we are working and partnering with a team of data scientists and software engineers to help to explore what are the ways that we can leverage AI and data science to enhance work integrated learning experiences for students. And again, really address those problems that we talked about at the beginning today of what we know sort of is the issue that students really want these experiences, that they find these experiences incredibly valuable, that they have high levels of stress and distress when they're not able to access them, and that there are fewer and fewer of them being offered. So that's really what we're trying to think about more broadly as we're thinking about developing and creating and refining the tools that we are involved with. So with that, we intentionally made sure we had lots of time for questions and conversation. We want to have a chance to hear from all of you, any feedback you have for us, as well as questions you have or things that you might like us to go back to.
Mindy, there is a question in the chat from Nicole. It asks, are you also considering resources for preceptor best practices and competencies?
That's a great question. And we have not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Missy, but we have not specifically talked in that way or we haven't specifically focused in that direction so far. But I think we'd be very happy if you have questions or think about ways that some of what we have been doing, either from a research perspective or the tools and resources we're developing, that would be helpful for you as you're working in this space.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to the students of interns as well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences working with these tools. So I also come from academia, but part of my role is helping students to find governmental public health internships. So not coming from industry. So we also try to frame this as a beneficial experience for the preceptors, but there's less focus on what are the skills they need to be strong supervisors and preceptors for learners. So that's kind of the context where my question comes from is how do we actually support the preceptors to be the best they can be when coming from a governmental perspective and an under-resourced governmental perspective in some cases.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I think it speaks to some of what we've been working on in terms of the focus for supervisors and supporting supervisors and understanding their needs as well as their pain points. And it sounds like, Nicole, for you doing really good work in that space as well and identifying where the problems or the gaps are still existing. Yeah. So again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question aloud, or feel free to ask more questions in the chat. And in the meantime, Suchita, if you could forward to the thank you slide, I just want to acknowledge at CCWT and the work that we have been doing is funded by the Gates Foundation. So we always want to acknowledge their generous support for the work that we're doing and the impactful work that they're doing more broadly in this space and trying to support students and address some of these institutional level and employer level issues. What other questions are there or points to dig in further? Yes, there's a question and I'll read it aloud and then would love to invite our co-presenters to jump in. So it says, hi, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the assessments and evaluations that the students use during the internship. I believe Nadia mentioned it could help facilitate feedback without directly asking supervisors. Is that a tool we can request or have more information about? So Nadia or Missy, do you want to jump in and say a little bit more about that piece?
I'm sorry, I'm reading it again. So
I believe
we,
it's in reference to the competency assessment, right?
yeah, the
Okay.
competency assessment. So the whole point of the competency assessment is really about communication. And so that is kind of, that's a really good point. It is about facilitating, giving feedback, um, and making it easier to talk about performance and expectations. Um, and really that's a good point. It could be a good tool for interns to talk to their supervisor. I guess if that's what you mean, without directly asking, they could point back to their competency assessment as a tool for communicating. I'm not really sure if that's what you're talking about, or the way you're thinking about using it. Um,
And I think, Nadia, you mentioned as you were talking about your own experience that you used it in this way. And so I think
yeah.
that's maybe where the question's coming from. Do you want to say a little bit more, Nadia, in response to that?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I would say that I mentioned that as one of the most helpful parts about the competency assessment is that we would both take turns rating myself on the skill set from 1 to 3. And so what that gave was an opportunity. For example, if we had different ratings for a skill, I remember there was one skill where I had rated myself a 1, and then Missy had rated myself a 2. And what happened with that is that we discussed, oh, like, why is it that you're feeling less confident in this skill set? This is how I've seen you uh, use this skill set, apply yourself in this way within the internship itself. And what that allowed was just for me to see my strengths in a way that was more reflective, based on different other people's perspectives, and also be able to assess myself and use that time when we were developing the learning plan to think about, oh, this is the way, these are the parts of the skill that I feel most confident in, and this is what Missy says I'm doing well, and how can I apply myself now in these other sub skills so that I can keep growing. And so I would say that the competency assessment is structured in a way where you have this set time to discuss your learning plan, to discuss the comments that were made in the assessment, and it opens up conversation for these larger feedback on your performance and what's going well and what has room to improve in. So yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me in the assessment. We have some screenshots on the slide right here of kind of what that looks like, what the rating scale looks like, and those text boxes underneath, which really allow you to take your time and speak to why you made that rating on the skill itself. But I hope that is answers your question.
The other way I use this is interview prep. So the next time we do this, um, and I actually did it earlier for the last interns, and I kind of wish I had done it for them too, these two as well. I had them write their responses as though they were replying to or responding to a question about the skill, about how they demonstrated that skill, in an interview. Um, because I feel like this is a great opportunity for them to practice, um, talking about their skills. And so, and our last round of interns really appreciated having that opportunity. And the last couple of slides, you might have noticed when Suchita accidentally went forward, there were a couple of slides. In the appendix of this, you'll see some of the feedback from our previous interns. So when I share the slide deck, or when we share the slide deck, you'll see some of that feedback. So, and then Christine had the question about affiliate members wanting to get involved. So we'll be in touch later about that, Christine, just to let you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I'll just say, feel free to email me, and I put my email address in the chat, both are my individual email as well as CCWT email address to learn more if you'd like to be involved. As Missy mentioned, she's going to be sharing out the slides and kind of a link to the slides and a link to some of the other resource pages so that you have those easily available to you if you're interested moving forward. But always feel free to be in touch if there's interest in collaborations or discussing. We're a very small center and we are fully reliant on grant funding. So we're also in the midst of figuring out sort of what the scope and capacity for some next steps next year can be.
Great,
So
thank you.
yes. There's another question, I'll read it aloud, relating to the feedback assessment evaluation. We are, oh, sorry, I just lost my screen. We are seeing students be less open to feedback, scared about confidentiality and that they'll be treated differently, and generally less able to be direct with supervisors. Any ideas on how to better create an environment for feedback? Yeah, such a great question. And I have some thoughts, but I would be happy to. I think, especially, I'm thinking about Suchita and Nadia's recent session that they had about communication and conflict, and Missy's delivery of that session, and wondering if the three of you want to jump in first to address that question.
Well, I'm curious, what would the two of them say about if there's anything I've done to help them feel like open to feedback? Like, is there anything I've done to make you feel like you can request feedback from me? You can, is there anything I've done to help you feel like the environment is a good place for, I don't know, any of that, like what Amanda is asking?
I think for me, there was this one story you told us about your previous supervisor and how in the first time you got feedback, you took it kind of personally, but then you learned it was just a way to grow. I think that story that you told me was just a way to kind of separate your worth from feedback that you might be getting from your supervisor. Like realize that if someone says that you did something wrong, that's not a reflection of your personality, or that doesn't mean you're a bad employee or anything like that, but just that it's a way to grow. I think just always having a really open-minded and growth-oriented mindset towards work is really important. And I feel like maybe especially our generation, I don't know if that's kind of what the question was getting at, but I feel like our generation is more indirect with communication in ways, and you can offend someone really quickly. But I think when you shared that story with me, I really learned to like separate my self-worth with the feedback that I was getting at work. And that just made me more open to hearing what you had to say and looking at that as an opportunity to fix my skill set for when I enter the professional workforce. Yeah. I don't know if you had anything to add, Nadia, but go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with what you said, Sachita. I think the the idea that feedback was welcome and also necessary was something that was I was given the sense of even from like the very beginning of the internship, even from the interview itself. And when we did the onboarding, I think Missy was very clear. If you have any thoughts on the onboarding itself, on the resources, be sure to let me know. I want you to be able to learn. And I think just having that reassurance that you are allowed to make mistakes as an intern and that your supervisor will, be there for you and be honest with you and help you grow in those ways was just a really important sentiment that I think came across pretty quickly. I remember for one of my learning plans, we had decided that we wanted to do some more like out of the box marketing. And so that was something that I mentioned to Missy. And as such, she gave me the assignment. I'll make 3 out of the box marketing ideas by the end of the semester in your internship. And she told me, these are experimental. I don't want you to feel like there's going to be consequences if they don't turn out right, because that's all part of the learning experience. And you can send them to me first. I can review them so that you feel better about it. And I think knowing that there is that kind of collaborative space and that you're able to be honest about your work and what's working, what's not working, was something that has been highly communicated. And so having a supervisor who is responsive to your concerns, but also, genuinely wanting the best for you when you're learning is, I think, the most important element in just feeling safe to ask for feedback and then also to give feedback yourself. And I know in this webinar also, we have a little feedback form. So Suchita and I are constantly applying feedback and, trying to develop ourselves in that way and hear from other people. So make sure to fill that out.
Yeah, I was hoping to hear what they said, because from the very start in their interviews, I try to make it very clear that I make mistakes and I expect mistakes. Not that I encourage mistakes, but we all make mistakes and we probably learn best from mistakes. So, because nobody's perfect. And so, from the very start, I just try to make it very clear that they're in an environment where it's not going to be the end of the world if a mistake happens, and that we'll learn from it and it's going to be part of their growth and development. And so creating a culture where it's all part of the learning and just continuing to reinforce that throughout the internship, which is what I've tried to do. I think that is the best piece of advice that I can give. And even in their competency assessments, I try to remind them of that. So I think that's what I try to do. So I hope that helps, Amanda. And I think we are almost at time. We are at 2:12. We can maybe do one last quick question.
I'm not seeing any questions.
I'm not either.
But feel free to jump in if you have them. But in the meantime, I just really wanted to say thank you to Nadia and Suchita that this was a great job. And I think one of our goals also was to have them have a chance to give some of the work that they've been doing and to showcase their work and to showcase them as part of the development of our project and of these resources. So thank you all.